I'd like to resume the 134th meeting, and we turn this afternoon as our first order of business to Commissioner Stebbins and Economic Development. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, like my colleague yesterday, Commissioner Zuniga, I'll apologize to everybody who I have my back to, and again, remark at how thrilled I am to be the speaker right after lunch without any pretty pictures. And all right. The Economic Development Review of the application, just as a reminder, Section 3 of the application breaks out neatly into 3 criteria which measure the applicant's economic impact on the community in the region surrounding the facility. Coincidentally, these criteria are also provided in order of how they were laid out in the gaming statutes, findings and declarations section. Job creation covers headcount, job quality, rate of pay, benefits, workplace safety, recruitment efforts, labor relations, strategies for recruiting the unemployed and underemployed residents. Number 2, supporting external business. That focuses on how the applicant plans to support and contract with local vendors for both design, construction, and operational phases, through the host and surrounding community agreements, purchasing domestically manufactured slot machines, and efforts to engage minority women and veteran business enterprises, again, for design, construction, and operation of the Category 1 resort casino. Regional tourism and attractions is the third component. That highlights how an applicant may help draw visitors to the region, partner with existing attractions, host additional events, and how their project fits into any local or regional economic development agendas. One of our reviewers, Betsy Wall, would make sure that I tell you the Massachusetts tourism industry generates close to $1 billion in state and local taxes, $16.9 billion in travel-related expenditure, and supporting about 124,000 jobs across the Commonwealth. Our advisors and support groups, our list of staff and reviewers who assisted with this evaluation of the RFA2 applications has remained the same throughout. Their work consisted of reviewing hundreds of application questions and pages and statements and attachments. Our evaluators came from both inside and outside the public sector with active experience in labor and workforce development, regional economic analysis, and travel and tourism. You can see from the slide the titles and area responsibilities for our reviewers. I would also like to provide some background on our contractual subject matter experts, HLT. They've been a critical resource in the evaluation process. Lyle Hall, one of the founding principals at HLT, has been providing consulting services to the Canadian and international hospitality, leisure, and tourism industry for 30 years. Prior to forming HLT, Lyle was a national director of KPMG's Canada's hospitality, leisure, and tourism practice. We were also assisted by Carla Giancola from HLT as well. Our approach, I organized our group of independent evaluators and technical experts who have significant experience in the area of labor and workforce development, again, regional economic impact analysis and tourism. I assigned a technical reviewer to be the primary reviewer for each of our 3 categories. And then Director Jill Lacey Griffin from the MGC staff, who's experienced working with the City of Boston at the Boston Foundation on workforce issues and small business development. She and I reviewed all 3 of the criteria groupings of questions. We had multiple group discussions on the applications and suggested possible ratings. Additionally, I used information from additional detail that was requested on labor, payroll, and benefits through a request for clarification questions, information from our 90-minute presentations by the 2 applicants, follow-up comments received through MGC comments, follow-up questions both placed in writing to the applicants. We had 27 clarification questions for Wynn, Massachusetts, 28 from Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts. We also included in our discussion feedback from our site visit to Mohegan Sun's facility in Connecticut and Wynn Resort's property in Las Vegas, along with a handful of reference calls to travel and business organizations located near these respective facilities. Again, the components reviewed. This is my approach to this presentation, reviewing those three sections again. We begin with job creation, looking at the number of jobs proposed, salary, wages, and benefits, internal promotional ladders, onboarding, diversity, and HR practices, percent of employees that are unionized, as well as the employer's retention rates, external business impact. What impact will design, constructing, and operating the casino have on businesses within the host community and surrounding area? In tourism, how much does the applicant plan to draw new visitors to the region, encourage longer stays in Massachusetts, and partner with existing tourism organizations and connect with existing tourist destinations and amenities? Next. Oops. Job creation components. Again, we have these broken out. Creation of jobs was a priority of the impetus for the passage of the Expanded Gaming Act. In this portion of the application, we examined three key areas, including employees, workforce development practices, relationships with labor unions. What we were looking for was, for employees, we looked to the number of employees they plan to hire, both FTE, part-time, full-time breakdown, wages and benefits, key HR practices, ethnic diversity and retention rates. Each applicant we conducted similarly in the Region B application process. Each applicant was sent a spreadsheet to complete and asked them to provide FTE counts, full and part-time employment, and related salaries and benefits. Workforce development, we covered topics such as how the company brings employees on board, provides training, what strategies they have for recruiting from populations of the unemployed and underemployed. Finally, under labor relations, we looked to the employer's track record with respect to labor relations, ensuring labor harmony, and what PLAs or LHAs the company may have in place. In their application, it was our goal to determine how well they knew the local Revere or Everett market. Did they sign an MOU with the Mass Community College Casino Careers Training Institute? And what relationships have they identified to help recruit local residents for new positions? I know Commissioner Cameron has the who, what, where, when, why facts. I go for what we were looking for and what we hope to find. After reviewing the two applications, what we found. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts provided a realistic quantification and description of their FTEs, including wage and benefit rates. We'll take a little more detailed look at the FTE salary data and benefits on the next slide. The company offered a comprehensive benefit package, strong retention at their existing operations. They retained about 84% of their employees. They demonstrated their success in recruiting and hiring the unemployed, most specifically at their Pennsylvania facility. Through their host community agreement and surrounding community agreement, they have offered significant detail and commitment to hire from within a 15-mile radius of Revere City Hall. They've also aggressively outreached to local organizations to assist with the recruitment and hiring and have undertaken this task in an aggressive manner. They demonstrated their success in diversity hiring at their other locations, which are less diverse than the Boston region. Wynn, Massachusetts also operates with a strong retention rate at their Las Vegas properties. The company acknowledged an agreement to partner also with the community colleges and also with Bunker Hill Community College to offer their red carpet training and program for hospitality training. And while Wynn pointed to their success in hiring and recruiting for Las Vegas with minorities, veterans, and women, we found a less detailed approach for Massachusetts. Move on to the job summary. We'll go through some of these details as thoroughly as we can. This slide again summarizes the job summary spreadsheet provided by the applicants. Again, this information was requested from each applicant in a spreadsheet we asked them to complete prior to the December 31st application deadline. Wynn has provided information accounting for a higher overall employee count, including full-time and part-time employees. I would like to note that their FTE count does not include the estimated 410 additional FTEs that would be coming to work on the property for third-party retail operators. Comparable first-year wages and benefits and overall payroll and benefits are projected at a higher rate than Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts. Mohegan Sun has proposed a higher percent of payroll for benefits. We estimate or calculate that WIN's numbers were somewhat lower because likely medical and healthcare contributions for their union positions were not included in the statistics. Again, both have strong employee retention rates. WIN did set themselves apart by allocating almost 7 times as much as Mohegan for pre-opening labor and training and recruiting costs. Mohegan Sun did expect to spend $6.6 million for pre-opening labor and training. However, those costs weren't segmented out into whether for training or labor or recruitment costs. At this time, in talking about jobs and the job summary, obviously, the Mohegan Sun project is also connected with the thoroughbred racing operations at Suffolk. We did, with the assistance of HLT, prepare a memo that was shared with the Commission. That memo is now also up on our website, and I believe has been shared with both our applicants. It talks about the employee count at Suffolk. It is separate from this presentation, as I said. It outlines the job impact if for any reason Suffolk would close, certainly the impact both projects would have on the current thoroughbred racing operations, as well as align some information with respect to the revenue sources that will be going both to thoroughbred racing and harness racing from gaming revenues once these facilities open, as well as contributions from the license fees. Move on to the next. This is just a similar to other license evaluations. We wanted to provide a quick economic snapshot of each community in the surrounding county. Both communities are roughly the same size. Everett and Revere have similar age demographics and diverse populations. Their overall unemployment rate, as we've been told time and time again at host community hearings, overall employment rate is roughly about the same between the two. Both communities do have lower household incomes and median housing prices than the average for their host county. And quickly, want to discuss the diversity comparisons. With respect to employee diversity, both have respectable numbers at their largest U.S. facilities. They are also equally split with respect to percent of men and women working on the property. Mohegan Sun prides itself on being a minority-owned company, have undertaken successful strategies to diversify their workforce, especially in Connecticut, where the nearby population is not as diverse as the Boston area. WIN explains that they focus on diverse employee base because it helps them appeal to their diverse customer base, which they plan to draw through visitors from foreign countries. The job creation rating. The overall rating for under the job creation criterion favors WIN. Their rating was strongly enhanced by their projected job numbers during construction and operation, as well as the higher wages and salaries per FTE. The company is also entering into local partnerships with the community colleges to offer needed training programs, and again is planning to spend $5 million in pre-opening recruitment and training efforts. Mohegan has successfully focused on identifying local partners, extending their training relationships beyond the community colleges, most recently to LaSalle College, and have proposed a more detailed locally based strategy for recruiting local unemployed and underemployed residents. Their HCAs and SCAs provide strong detail on the applicants' proposed recruiting strategies and commitments. Again, both have demonstrated their success in employing strong HR practices and success in recruiting diverse employees. From our site visits, I think my three colleagues would agree with me. You can certainly feel the camaraderie and the positive work environment among employees at both applicants' facilities. I think the day we were at Mohegan Sun, they were gearing up for a ping pong tournament. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts has proposed a higher percentage of construction labor hours for minorities and women, but again will rely on their yet to be named general contractor. WIN has a relationship with their contractor and identified subcontractor to help meet their diversity goals. Both plan to meet and exceed the target laid out in Administration and Finance Administrative Bulletin number 14. Before I move on to the next criterion, I'll take any questions on the job creation piece, if there are any.
I had a couple of questions, Commissioner.
Sure.
If we could move back to the job summary category.
Slide 7.
Yes, slide 7. Just want to make sure I understand these numbers properly. These are the top figure construction numbers, and those are salaries attributed?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are, you'll see below with the operational side, you have full-time equivalents. The construction numbers are broken out into full-year equivalents, since you'll have construction people kind of rotating in and off the construction site.
But the numbers are very different. I guess I'm surprised at that for construction, where it's union workers.
I think Commissioner, the primary difference there is the sheer construction cost of the two projects, and because WIN's construction project is much larger, you're seeing that reflected in the labor that's associated with that.
Okay, thank you. I also had a question about the HLT racing memo. So if I want to just understand the analysis here, and I think that I do. What we're looking at are just the numbers from employment as opposed to the other ancillary jobs with racing. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And that's done because
I think it's referenced a number of 325 employees plus potentially hundreds of licensees.
okay, that's okay. And then I think the comparison here really is those numbers of those employment numbers versus, and maybe I'm just making this comparison and you didn't attempt to do that, but versus the additional employees that will be hired by WIN. Is that, am I kind of assessing that? And I know there are other stipulations, for example, the timing, right? Some jobs are a couple of years away.
Right. At the June 25th host community hearing, the pledge was put forth by WIN that they would give preferential hiring treatment to Suffolk employees if for any reason that the racetrack closed.
Right, and I think that you do have a note in here that some of those skills may not be transferable, correct?
Right.
So
And
it's
we'll
hard
have, and I'll address a license condition with respect to that
Oh, you will?
strategy when we get to it.
Okay, so, okay, well, I'll wait for that then. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
I had a couple of questions with respect to slide 7 as well. How was, first of all, with the construction salaries, how was that salary calculated? Was that based on, it must have been based on information. That's obvious, right? How was it calculated?
The applicant's commissioner provided us with total labor, construction labor. We went back through an RFC and asked them to break that down on look at the length of the contract and the average wages they were looking at. So what you're seeing there is, as Commissioner Stebbins said, on a full year equivalent basis, if you were to multiply, for example, for Mohican, 1,579 full year equivalents times $74,000, and then in turn by the 30 months that the project takes you, you would end up with construction labor just shy of $300 million. That compares to construction labor on the WIN side of just over $600 million.
Okay, but the $74,000 is really what I was looking at. My question was imprecise. How was that calculated? The 74,000 and the 117,000.
It was provided by taking the applicant's estimates of on-site employment and reducing that down to a full year basis, because not all employees would be there at all times over the length of the construction project.
Okay, but I gather that a plumber makes so much an hour, a carpenter makes so much an hour, a electrician makes so much an hour, so is that 117 and the 74 some kind of a blended rate?
It is a blended rate, and so we asked for the total value of construction labor in hundreds of millions of dollars and the number of employees, and that's
I
what
see.
dropped out the
I
other
see.
end.
Okay.
So we held
Okay.
two numbers constant, and that's what came out the other end. If we equated both the annual salaries, you would simply end up with many more full year equivalents
Right.
On the
Okay,
wind
I
program.
got it. So it's the total construction cost divided by the number of employees. Okay. And then, how were was the payroll and benefit rate numbers given to you directly by the employees, or was there a calculation there as well? By the applicants, or was there a calculation there as well?
They were given to us directly by the applicants on a template we devised before the applications were due in December.
Okay. And insofar as on the wind side, benefits as a percentage of payroll, there was some information in the application, I believe, about the value of the health contribution. Is that right?
Correct. So
At least historically. We don't know what it'll be here, but historically.
yes, we went back to Wynn through a request for clarification and asked them to estimate medical benefits. They declined and simply said that would be part of a discussion they would have with during the unionization process for the casino.
Okay.
But they provided us with a number for their facility in Nevada, and Commissioner Stebbins will deal with that in the licensing conditions as well.
Okay. And so, all right, those are the questions that I had. Thank you.
Can I go back to the rough figure of 300 million in labor costs, construction costs? What would be the total construction cost that is inferred in that 300 million? Because from my presentation yesterday, you'll recall that the on-site construction cost, including materials, overhead, and profit for construction was approximately 400 million. Does it include other infrastructure spending, for example?
Commissioner Zinnik, I'm trying to remember. The construction labor number was a number they provided us independently from everything else, so it would be
Okay.
within a separate RFC. I can't relate it back to the other material.
Okay. Can I wanted to ask a question, if we're ready to, we're done with that line. Could we go back to page 10? At the host community hearing, the union that represents hospitality and food and beverage, for the Mohegan applicant, told us that we could not expect labor harmony, given the way that Mohegan subcontracts out all of their food and beverage. Did you take that into consideration in this rating?
If you look down, you're talking about Mohegan?
Yes.
If you look down to the last bullet, again, the difference between the two bullets under both applicants, Mohegan demonstrates strong working relationships with organized labor relative to construction, but we were lacking some detail or plans for the unionization during the operational phases.
Mohegan Sun did, in a request for clarification, point out that it was likely that a greater proportion of the employees at the retail dining entertainment center would be part-time as opposed to full-time.
Part-time as opposed to full-time.
Right.
All right. I may come back to this notion in the conditions, but I would want to go ahead and keep going.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Move to the slide to start support for external business components. Again, under this question, we organized the questions into subcategories: local business promotion and support, How do they plan to promote and partner with local businesses so as to make sure the project is not walled off and can have a positive impact on the amenities and businesses around the casino? Minority, women, and veteran business involvement. We note this consistent reference to these groups throughout the legislation. And then regional impact, both projected benefit for the regional economy in coordination with regional and local economic development plans. And then I also have kind of what we would equate to as a check-the-box question with respect to gaming equipment. The applicants need only to identify who their domestic vendors of gaming equipment and slot machines will be. What we were looking for, we were certainly looking for experience and plans for cross-marketing initiatives, extent of relationships with local suppliers and vendors, and arrangements to ensure participation, again, from local MBE, WB, and VB vendors. We are also looking for realistic, achievable, and experience-based implementation for creating vendor partnerships and how vendors could be identified and supported. We also look to see how the proposed projects tie in with local and regional economic development initiatives. What we found answers from both applicants to these topics, as well as some omissions that we'll discuss. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts quantified their local goods and service spending would total $62 million. I think the company has done an extraordinary job in a short amount of time engaging and reaching out to local businesses. They have made commitments in their host community and surrounding community agreements to spend approximately $62.5 million in goods and services. These commitments were somewhat confusing as we were looking at them. Confusing because the overall total did not change amongst the host community and surrounding communities, but almost the entire total appeared committed to the cities of Revere, Boston, and Chelsea. Their awareness efforts and vendor relationship building activities were impressive in what they provided in their application. Again, we gave them a spreadsheet which we'll detail a little bit more in the next slide and ask them to break out for us by category what they plan to spend by category locally and other. We'll get back to the $62.5 million figure. They have successfully recruited now over 400 local businesses to participate in their Momentum loyalty program, allowing patrons to redeem points, award points at area businesses and attractions. Wynn has projected for us a higher local goods and service spend at $95 million. They made no specific commitment to local purchases in Everett, but did make target commitments in other surrounding community agreements, including guaranteeing modest amounts of gift certificate purchases from businesses in those communities. The company also provided detail and local consultants about local consultants that they plan to hire to increase their MBE, WB, and VB participation rates especially during the construction period. There were key concerns for each applicant. For Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, we certainly applaud their creative efforts with this Momentum loyalty program. However, they could not be specific as to the impact through any detailed analysis, and it was not tied to their operating projections. The company also focuses on a higher percentage of visits coming from the local market, which may mean less potential for incremental local spending from outside guests and those with extended stays. Wynn alludes to higher-end business partners and suppliers, which may lead some to the perception of exclusivity and limited participation of local businesses. They also did identify a list of 400 business supporters, but those may or may not become suppliers. The next slide, again, shows the operating expenses. Again, these financials were provided us to each applicant. We broke down the categories in the totals and requested that they tell us what breakdown would be between local and other. We didn't even define really local for them. These financials, again, Wynn proposes over 2/3 of their goods services to be purchased locally, and according to MSM's figures, just under half projected to be spent on goods and services will come from local suppliers. though that is based on a projection from their other operating locations and could change. Next, to just summarize the, what I say is the culmination of the local impacts, economic impacts. In reviewing overall economic impacts coming from jobs, overall payroll, and spending on goods and services, and the percentage of that spending being done locally, WIN has a pronounced advantage over Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts. Beyond the applicant's spending projections, local economic impact is maximized by local wages and salaries being distributed throughout the area. In addition, we felt economic impacts are strengthened by WIN's larger share of overnight visitors in their target market, and encouraging visits by patrons from outside the region increases the potential new spending to be brought into the region. Again, support for external business rating. These bullets again cover the overall findings from questions 314 to 323 in the application. For this category, Mohegan was ranked as sufficient, very good, and Mohegan was ranked as sufficient, very good. WIN was ranked as very good. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, again, certainly showed creativity with respect to their momentum points program and have worked aggressively to reach out to business organizations in identifying key suppliers of goods and services. WIN has demonstrated their support to partnering with businesses throughout the community. There is evidence to suggest that WIN has not been as aggressive as MSM in reaching out to local businesses with respect to these vendor relationships, but they do have a positive track record in the other jurisdictions and have identified realistic targets for MBE, WB, and VB participation. Both applicants clearly identified the strategic role that they will play with respect to local and regional economic development plans. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts is focused on drawing guests to historic Revere Beach and beyond to other communities along the North Shore, as well as expanding and improving development along the 1A corridor. WIN clearly identifies their inclusion in local economic development plans to revitalize the contaminated industrial site, provide public access to the river, and use the region's waterways. Both applicants sufficiently answered, again, the question on identifying domestic slot machine manufacturers. Again, WIN ranks slightly higher than Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts for their projected local goods and service spending and increasing opportunities for more local spending through their focus on more overnight visitors to the region. Again, I just want to if we could go back to the local spending page. Again, we note that Mohegan provided for us that $62.2 million annually would be spent on those itemized goods and services. It was somewhat in contrast with what we saw through their host community and surrounding community agreement commitments. Their host community agreement has them pledging to spend $10 million or making good faith efforts, as both applicants do, to spending $10 million within the city of Revere. Their host community or surrounding community agreement with Boston details or makes a commitment, good faith effort commitment, to spend $50 million within, with businesses with a primary business location within the city of Boston, and approximately $2 million spent with businesses with a primary place of residence in Chelsea. We noted that in their other surrounding community agreements, there were commitments, good faith commitments made to spend $50 million within a certain radius, 15-mile radius of Revere City Hall. So we kind of grappled with commitments made to spend that $62 million between the three communities, and again, broader commitments in the surrounding communities for a $50 million spend. But I'll come back to that when we get to license conditions. We'll go to the last topic, criterion for tourism.
Can
Yes.
I ask a couple of questions on this topic before
Sure.
you leave? So on the same slide, where did the how did you get the $95 million for WIN?
Again, this is information provided to us by both applicants. We broke down the itemized categories, we gave them the total, and then we asked them to tell us what they plan to spend locally and what they plan to spend other, without really defining for them what local was. So we attempted to draw some resolution to it with our clarification questions, but it might be, I'm going to suggest as a conditional license that further clarification of this question be included.
That ties into my next question, which is on the issue at the bottom of slide 12, the previous slide, on the right-hand column dealing with wind, where you say the focus on higher-end partners may lead to the perception of exclusivity and limit participation of some businesses. There is in some of the materials I read, a pledge to help people become wind qualified.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what that's about?
What they've provided to us is that I would say what we pulled from their application is there's an expectation, and we have always talked that we don't want to saddle one of our applicants with bad vendors who can't meet their obligations and their needs. I think with WIN, there was an expectation or a pronouncement in the application talking about vendors meeting the WIN brand. Again, that might suggest that lead to a perception of the exclusivity and limited nature of business opportunities for vendors in the surrounding area. But both WIN and Mohegan talked about working with vendors, again, to be able to bring them up to a capacity to serve their needs.
And is that a quality capacity or a quantity capacity or a mixture of both?
My takeaway from the application is it's more of a quality capacity.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
I had a couple of questions as well.
Sure.
To get back to the, I'm on slide 12, the very top again. To get back to the 62 million versus 95 million, I know those are those numbers, but do you find them both to be within a range of being accurate? I mean, there was nothing, you didn't mention anything here that led you to believe that these numbers are not accurate in any way.
We didn't find, again, these numbers were provided to us. I don't think these numbers in terms of ongoing operational expenses or annual operating expenses, I don't think leaped off the page to any of us as a surprise or maybe out of whack. Again, they gave us the total number. We asked for the itemized breakdown and then said, what do you plan to spend that, buy that locally or beyond the local immediate area?
So as far as you understand, they're apples to apples here.
The totals are apples to
Yes.
apples.
Okay, so that's
Yep.
significantly higher. That's a third higher than 95, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the other question I had was on page 14, the visitation, the 23, almost 24% versus the 3.3%. Again, these are their numbers, correct?
Correct.
And there's no reason to believe that they're not achievable?
These, I'm sorry? Yeah, they are numbers provided to us, and again, I would suggest that they probably dovetail with their financial and business strategies as well.
And you mentioned, I just would like your understanding of what that really means. Now, you said that there was a greater potential for visitor spending. Could you give me a little more detail on that so I know how to accurately understand those numbers?
I would suggest that if you're drawing from, and both applicants are trying to tackle this in different ways relative to their business strategy. We saw yesterday that Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts has a preference for a more defined regional market.
Yeah.
If you're within an hour and a half, chances are you're less likely to stay over, you're less likely to go outside beyond the casino, you're less likely, if it's not an extended stay, to be spending more money around the community. WIN has certainly is following a strategy of attracting more people from outside the region, including what they would define as You know, they're high player, they're big rollers. Again, those are people coming for a longer period or extended stay. And even though we can't really put a number to it, there is an expectation that generating a larger amount of overnight business will tend to have a stronger ripple effect with what's being spent with local businesses out in the community.
So we're looking at spending in every single category: meals, lodging, events,
Transportation.
transportation. So this is a significant difference in your, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm looking at that and hearing you and saying that's a significant difference as a benefit to the Commonwealth.
It's a significant difference, and again, that's a projection that they provided to us upon our request.
Thank you.
Enrique?
All right.
No?
Again, we'll jump to tourism components. Again, under regional tourism and attractions, we group questions into two subcategories: tourism and regional promotion, and other amenities, enhancement, and business strategy. What we were looking for was past experience, proposed plans for entertainment and other amenities, cross-marketing, collaboration with other tourism organizations. We were also looking for an applicant's demonstrated awareness or knowledge of the local and area market. What we found, again, both applicants have identified strategies for working along organizations such as City Center, TD Bank Garden, Boston Symphony Orchestra, and other local convention and visitor bureaus. They provided critical detail on their efforts to market other businesses and attractions. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts focused on providing key shuttle services for patrons to visit the area destinations and marketing other businesses through in-house TV promotions and displays. Wynn will use their concierge program to also direct patrons to key amenities and destinations around the region. Mohegan Sun's partnership with City Center will allow them to schedule live entertainment at both Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts, and use City Center for bigger productions that are attractive for their patron base. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts also expressed a stronger interest to support regional efforts to bring larger conventions to Boston, essentially showcasing their hotels as the ability to be additional capacity when folks like the MCCA are out marketing buildings like this. Wynn will use its concierge service and gift certificates to promote local businesses. They have focused on their relationships with the BSO and TD Bank Garden for rewarding their top customers and players with entertainment events. Both applicants spoke to their focus on the international market and what organizations are critical to being successful in marketing the facility to international guests. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts was aware of the ongoing initiatives, partnering with the Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, but could not provide clear detail on how they would be helping to market internationally other than through those partnerships. Wynn is focused on international market and was impressive with their number of foreign marketing offices. However, we did not find sufficient detail was provided about how these local marketing offices would work to support a project like this. With respect to community enhancements, again, Mohegan Sun's Massachusetts commitment and contribution to identifying local community enhancements such as infrastructure improvements, as we've discussed throughout yesterday and today's proceedings. Wynn highlighted their role in reopening access to the water and cleaning up a contaminated industrial site in Everett is their community enhancement. There were some omissions of concern in the travel category. Again, Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts did not recognize the New York, Connecticut, or Rhode Island markets for attracting new visitors. The largest out-of-state market for Massachusetts visitors is New York State. And for Wynn, again, they lack detail about the use of these international offices and how that will drive visitation. They were also somewhat less than diligent in this part of the application. Potential partnering organizations were not identified correctly in some parts of the application, but I did not see that as a huge detriment. We had a sense both applicants had plans better than what was probably described in their application, but hence the lower rating. So for the overall tourism rating, again, this category encompasses a whole grouping of questions relative to visitorship, community enhancements, and provisions around entertainment and performances. Both applicants clearly see a value in helping to draw visitors from outside the region. For Wynn, it's a critical element for their business plan and their revenue forecasts. For Mohegan Sun, it does not factor into their projected patron visits, but both applicants recognize the organizations that would be strong marketing partners. Mohegan stressed their interest in partnering with the convention center to help lure more conventions and meetings to Boston, providing hotel capacity to the area. Wynn was more general in their strategy for working with local partners, though again, they clearly demonstrated experience and success drawing international visitors to their Las Vegas facility. They mentioned again their international marketing offices, but we could not see a concrete strategy for how these offices would benefit the Massachusetts casino. Mohegan outlined their goals also for how their Momentum card and player database would help draw visitors to the region. Wynn detailed their concierge program and player card benefits as well. Both applicants, again, offered significant investments into the community, Mohegan detailing their transportation improvements, community projects such as improvements to the city football field and a new youth center, Wynn highlighting their cleanup of the contaminated Monsanto site, and some community contributions locally to programs such as Amp It Up and local culinary programs. Just wrapping up some final thoughts, Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts. Again, both of these applicants are quality operators with significant, although very different strategies for the roles that they play in complementing the economy in the Region 8 communities. They also clearly understand that existing entities here in the region provide excellent partnership opportunities to deliver workforce development initiatives, build small business relationships, and bolster tourism, all of which will help achieve success. Mohegan Sun certainly has been active on the ground since gaining approval for their project in Revere earlier this year. Mohegan quickly developed a strong record and understanding of the local workforce and small business landscape in the region. They outline why they can be a good employer through leadership training, retention, promoting career pathways, and evidenced by the atmosphere, again, that we witnessed that they have created at their Connecticut facility. Mohegan has organized numerous sessions where job vendor and retailer opportunities were identified, and their outreach has been impressive. However, Mohegan's job projections, related wage information provided to us was significantly less than Wynn. Mohegan aggressively sought out business partnerships through the Momentum program as well as possible supplier relationships for the casino complex, but quantification of the final value of these programs were left unclear despite some requests for clarification. On the tourism front, again, Mohegan identified a role for itself in the region and how it can partner with existing organizations. Mohegan demonstrated an understanding of the value of international markets, but appeared to rely mostly on external partnerships to help deliver. In the end, Mohegan's visitor projections are almost entirely locally and regionally based. My final thoughts on the Wynn Everett proposal. Wynn draws on and displays their considerable experience gained in development of operations like their Las Vegas and Macau properties. Wynn, I don't think, reached the level of engagement and relationships in the area that Mohegan has demonstrated. We are disappointed that the application didn't always connect the dots between their experiences in Las Vegas and their potential strategies for operating in Everett. On the human resource front, Wynn demonstrated success as an employer with a target focus on diversity, career pathways, recruitment, including targeting folks from the armed services at the military bases near their facility in Nevada, and employee benefit programs. Wynn provided a significantly competitive workforce plan. A projected number of employees as well as wage and salary levels are significantly higher than Mohegan. Wynn provided limited detail about planned vendor outreach, focusing instead on the commitment to mirror their success in Las Vegas. And despite the lack of detail on how and why, committed to spending considerably more money locally on operational goods and services. These commitments tie back to their financial projections. Wynn understands the value of drawing the international visitor and patron from outside the region. Their experience in they have demonstrated it in Las Vegas is well documented throughout the application. Wynn International Marketing Offices, again, were also addressed, but limited detail on how they would be utilize to prepare the best approach for here in Massachusetts. Nevertheless, WIN's marketing financial projections demonstrate significant patronage from outside the region. We can move to the overall category rating. Again, finally, to assess the applicant's ratings in the 3 sub-criteria and an overall rating for the economic development category, I want to offer some notes about Mohegan Sun and WIN. Again, MSM clearly demonstrated they are a solid employer, can provide quality work environment with pathways to career growth for their employees. The constructional operational phases employment numbers, however, corresponding salary and wage scales are less than provided by WIN. WIN demonstrated their success also as a quality employer with good benefits and career pathways. And the number of FTEs and proposed wage salaries are significantly higher than that of Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts. Construction front, we note WIN has entered into an agreement with Gilbane, a general contractor, while Mohegan is yet to engage a general contractor. That will also be talked about during my discussion of possible license conditions. So again, the final ratings, overall category rating is very good for WIN, sufficient, very good for Mohegan Sun Revere, and you see the 3 sub-criterion category ratings as well.
Question, Commissioner?
Yep.
Would it be fair to say, from your analysis, that, I'm looking at, in particular, tourism, and I'm looking at the identification of international marketing initiatives and partnerships. Would it be fair to say that you believe WIN has the potential to bring in very good numbers with tourism? They have a history of doing so in Las Vegas, but they failed to articulate a strategy, which is why they didn't get a higher grade there. Is that right?
They spoke extensively about their experience in Las Vegas. They've been very successful in attracting and recruiting high-end patrons and guests from international destinations. They talk about it as a business strategy for their success in Everett. It didn't come across in the application how they connected, made those experiences and how they made them happen in Las Vegas and connect the dots to a similar strategy for Everett.
But because they have this, the identification of the international markets and partnerships, and they have a history of performing well in this area.
Right.
Is it your belief that they could in fact do that here, but they did not articulate that in the plan?
I would say they can do that here. I think they almost have to do that here if they're going to meet their business and revenue projections. If their operation is going to be successful, it's who they're geared towards as part of their business strategy. I think they have the potential to do that. I think both applicants also see opportunities to partner with existing organizations to capture people that already come to Boston because it is an international destination. But again, there was just some incompleteness in terms of taking their experience in Vegas and translating into a strategy for Everett.
Thank you.
I recognize that the last category has to do, has elements other than pure tourism, but
Correct.
to what extent did the chart on slide 14 for Mohegan Sun affect your overall rating with respect to tourism?
Is that the right slide? Economic impact?
Yeah.
Okay.
The source of visitors.
Yeah, again, most of the information you see on these 2 slides are based on both the jobs and the local business spend. Certainly local business spend could also fall over into tourism if you're thinking of how much you can get a foreign visitor or foreign guest to spend here in Massachusetts.
I'm
But-
really
Go ahead.
thinking of the pie chart in the lower left-hand corner.
Again, It's pretty clear that one applicant has a need to draw visitors for overnight, longer, hopefully overnight stays from their patron market from a broader region than Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts. Again, as a tourism strategy, we were more closely looking at how is our applicant going to draw visitors here, understanding each have a different market, but how are they going to get them engaged? And a lot of the questions in tourism are, how are you going to get them out to see, events going on in Salem, or how are you going to get them to go to an event at City Center? So the questions were more around potential local partnerships, events, activities, getting people to explore the immediate region. I think it's less based on where they're actually drawing the patron base from.
I see. What are you going to do with the out-of-towners once they get here?
Right. And each has a very, I would say Mohegan Sun to that goal has a very detailed program. Again, they see themselves as a link to connecting visitors out of Boston up to the North Shore. They're going to provide shuttle services.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
But it's interesting to note that their strategy is local, or regional rather, and they fail to market to 3 key New England states.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Commissioner?
So the category, you mentioned the community enhancement piece on the site cleanup. Is that where it fell under the broader category of tourism? Or
That's one of the elements of the tourism category of questions, the community enhancements.
Right.
Obviously, is each applicant put into their application what their community enhancement was. Mohegan said it's the improvements we're making to traffic along 1A. It's also their other local community enhancement commitments that they've made. For Wynn, it's the focus on cleaning up the contaminated part of the water as well as the contaminated industrial piece of land as their community enhancement.
Okay. And you deem
Certainly
them to
both,
be
commendable because of the size and the scope of the projects.
Absolutely.
Any other business coming into the community would probably not plump down that amount of cash to make a community enhancement.
I agree with that. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? All right,
Can I quickly move to
conditions.
some license conditions? There are not many and do not involve a large amount of cash. Recommended conditions from Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts. Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts agrees to report to the MGC upon selection of a general contractor and meet to review MBE, WBE, and VB commitments set out by MSM in their application. Again, this is a similar condition to what we established for MGM in Springfield, again, noting the critical nature of involvement by these types of firms in both the design and construction phase of the project. The next bullet, again, with respect to their proposed Momentum loyalty card program, Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts will agree to provide the following to us: an annual report on the number of participating businesses enrolled in the program and the dollar value of points redeemed by each business in the program, the formula to be used to convert points earned at Mohegan Revere to the net amount spent at participating businesses, and an estimate from their original projection of $50 million in points earned per annum of the net amount spent at participating businesses for the initial 3 years and then annually thereafter for just our approval and review. And finally, the issue I talked about earlier, again, the commitment in the local spending budget they provided to us was for a total of $62.5 million. We just want some clarification from the surrounding communities that they've entered into other agreements with, that there's an understanding of what that $50 million spent within the 15-mile radius of Revere City Hall understands, again, knowing that their commitments in the host community and surrounding community agreements kind of quickly gobble up that local planned operational expenditures. Any questions on those?
Yes, I don't,
Sure.
I'm sorry, but I don't fully understand that last one. The three together, the Revere 10, the 50 in Boston, and the 2.5 are more than 62.2. They're
Correct.
62.5, right?
Right.
So what does the last sentence mean as a practical matter?
Well, again,
What are we asking them to do in that last sentence?
basically what we're asking them to do is, again, they have surrounding community agreements which stress good faith efforts that they're going to spend $50 million within a 15-mile radius of Revere City Hall. That is in surrounding community agreements except for these three. If you take what they tell us is spending locally, the 62.5 quickly gets gobbled up by their commitments, their best faith effort commitments to these three communities. What we're looking for is an acknowledgement from the other surrounding communities of what that $50 million pledge meant and how it ties back to what they've committed in these other agreements.
Are we looking for this from the surrounding communities or from Mohegan Sun?
I believe we have targeted for the surrounding communities to acknowledge back to us that they understand what the commitments were, keeping in mind these commitments and what they plan to spend locally.
So this is not something that we're imposing as a condition on Mohegan Sun. This is more information that we want from the surrounding communities?
We envision Mohegan Sun, Massachusetts should re-engage these surrounding communities, talk about that provision of their surrounding community agreement, and again, balance it between what we're seeing in these other commitments and what they've told us their total local spend is going to be.
The missing element, Commissioner, that might make this just a little bit clearer is that in addition to what we've said in this bullet point is that there are 10
Right.
surrounding communities with an agreement to spend $50 million in them, which can't be met if the $62.5 million is spent in these three municipal specific
No,
agreements.
okay. But the 50 million in them is encompassed by the 15 miles of Revere?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's double counting. If you add all the commitments
So-
together, there's potential
okay.
double counting.
So what we're looking for is a statement from Mohegan Sun that it's conferred with the surrounding communities about the meaning of the $50 million within 15 miles provision of the surrounding community agreements, and it has reached some conclusion that it tells us.
Or it needs to adjust its local spending so that it meets the commitments. But
Yes.
I think what we were trying to point out for the commission's benefit is a potential double counting of
No, I
commitments.
understand that, but I'm just having trouble because this is something we want them to do, so we have to make clear to them what we want them to do, and we have to understand that. So this is a mechanism we're trying to impose on them to go clarify with the surrounding communities what the provision of these identical provisions of the agreement mean in practical terms.
At least an acknowledgement that that's there from the surrounding communities.
An acknowledgement that they understand X to be the consequence of that provision,
Yes.
i.e. that they're going to participate in a piece of the 50 million, or that some subset of the 50 million will be set aside for them.
I think, sorry, Commissioner, I think the challenge is to look for an acknowledgement from the surrounding communities or from Mohegan Sun, from MSM, that there is a potential double counting, and that the communities, now that having seen all the surrounding community agreements and the potential overlap of those, are aware of that condition, and that then the commission is not faced post-opening with the approval of something that contained a potential overlap or a potential double counting.
All right, I think I understand. I may want to talk a little bit about this tomorrow, because these conditions, each has to be clear, and at the moment, I'm not exactly certain of, I'm aware of the problem. I understand the problem, and the problem is clearly described. How this provides a remedy, but we can talk about that tomorrow. Okay.
Could I offer a condition here, or is this something that we could come back to tomorrow?
Yeah, I think tomorrow would be a better time for
Okay.
that, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the next slide. Oh, sorry, got a couple more to get up. Recommended, again, conditions for Wynn. Wynn Everett LLC will commit to hire 75% of employees from within 30 minutes of Everett, as stated at the June 25th, 2014 host community hearing. Wynn Everett LLC will offer jobs to Suffolk Downs employees on a preferential basis. Wynn will provide a recruiting and training plan with MGC approval for these workers should Suffolk Downs close at any time. Again, that was a commitment made at the June 25th, 2014 host community hearing and not included in the application. Wynn will commit to provide medical/dental benefits to unionized and non-unionized employees at Wynn Everett, at least commensurate with the benefit programs offered at Wynn's Nevada casinos. And then it's not on this slide, but I would echo the, from Commissioner Cameron's slide, that Wynn also meet their BAFO commitments to the City of Boston for what I would consider the economic development related provisions. Those are good faith efforts to purchase goods and services from Boston-based businesses, cross-marketing with Boston-based businesses, and a good faith effort to create a Boston construction and operations hiring plan. Finally, just
Could I ask about that last bullet point? Is that commensurate in terms of scope, or in terms of dollar value, or in terms of both?
commensurate with scope. Correct. Commensurate with scope.
All right, cost is not the issue.
No. Commensurate in scope. Correct.
And why the same for unionized and non-unionized?
That was a commitment that that Wynn has in the application.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry, this is drawn then?
Parity between them, but the quantification as to what that is still the open-ended piece.
Oh, okay, but parity between them is a commitment that they made in the application?
Yes.
All right, that's the answer to that question. Okay.
Finally, conditions for both Region A applicants. This is something that we've seen similar with both the Category B license and the Category A license in Region B. These are the affirmative marketing program plans that are required by a licensee or that we've requested of MGM as a licensed designee. The only real change here is that we are requiring those strategies to include a very visible public outreach component in the plans that are presented to us post-licensing. And those are the three plans that we've laid out in our other license conditions prior to this.
All right, that's clear. Questions? All right, thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more piece to go. Let's just take a 5-minute break here and stretch, and then we'll have our last presentation for the day, and then move on to the next step.
Good idea.
Me too.
All right, I think we're ready to resume now and deal with the final report, the fifth of the 5, which is the overview report. As you'll recall from the introduction, there are 5 reports that are, or 5 sections, I should say, of the application. An overview is the section that remains to be reported upon. The overview section was done in the past 2 licensing processes by Chairman Crosby, but he recused himself. So we've divided up the questions, the 9 questions that form a part of the overview criterion among the 4 of us, and we'll each report on the questions that have been assigned to us. In order to assess the questions on the overview project, however, Chairman Crosby created a team of advisors, as each of us did with the other group. And those advisors are listed on the board here today. Teresa Chung, the Senior Development Coordinator for the Asian American Civic Association; Philip Clay, a professor of city planning and former provost former provost at MIT; Elizabeth Devlin, the founder and digital curator of Flux Boston; Ruth Ellen Fitch, a former corporate attorney and the president emeritus of the Dimmick Community Health Center; John Hawthorne, the founder and CEO of Mass Challenge; Ira Jackson, the current dean of the McCormick Graduate School at the University of Mass Boston; John Mullen, professor of regional planning at UMass Amherst; Lily Mendez Morgan, chief operating officer of Massachusetts Red Cross; and Joseph Thompson, the director of the Mass MoCA, Mass Museum of Contemporary Art. That group was assembled early in the overall application, overall analysis of the RFA 2 applications. And it simultaneously reviewed all 3 applications: the application submitted by MGM, application submitted by Mohegan Sun, the application submitted by Wynn. And then, as I said, Chairman Crosby recused himself, but after preparing a report on MGM's responses to the questions and a report that he presented during the MGM evaluation. When we divided up the 9 questions, Commissioner Cameron evaluated questions 1 and 9. I evaluated 2 and 3. Commissioner Stebbins evaluated 5, 7, and 8. And Commissioner Zuniga evaluated questions 4 and 6. The way we did that was that in the course of our evaluations, each of us met separately with the group that I've just outlined that Chairman Crosby had formed, though several members of that group were unable to attend the meetings that each of us held with them. We each held one meeting with that group. Each of us also had access to notes compiled by the staff of Pink & Company at meetings that the group had had, and that summarized the group's discussion of the questions for which that commissioner was responsible. We didn't have notes, any of us, with respect to the group's thinking about the questions for which we were not responsible. All references to Chairman Crosby or his views were deleted from the notes before we saw them. The resulting evaluations that are set forth below reflect solely the judgment of the commissioner responsible for making that evaluation, although all of the commissioners are grateful for the thoughts, insights provided by members of the advisory group. In that sense, we relied on the advisory group and our own analysis and our own thoughts in much the same way as we relied on the advice and assistance of the groups that helped us with the reports we've already presented. The commissioners have not discussed their evaluations with each other, and will determine the overall rating for Category 1 during the public sessions of the licensing proceeding. That's a difference here from the reports we've given thus far, in which we wound up with an overall rating for the category. We can only do that in a public session. We haven't done that yet. We haven't talked about our individual ratings and analysis yet, and we'll do that as the first item of business when we finish with the conditions and finished with our answers to the material assertions of material error when we begin our deliberations. That'll be the first item of business in our overall deliberations. We'll proceed then to the questions for which we were assigned, and we're going to do that in the order in which we made our other presentations. And therefore, we're going to take the questions in the first section of the application out of order. We'll take them in the order in which we're going to present, but that won't adversely affect understanding. The first question deals with a destination resort, and it's worth reading the question because each of these questions, unlike the others, deal with overall themes rather than specific details of the kind that we've been discussing thus far. These are basically thematic questions, and it's worth understanding precisely what it is that the question was seeking. Question 2, therefore, is some visionaries in the gaming business described an evolution of gaming facilities from convenience casinos to destination resorts to city integrated resorts. Explain what, if any, meaning city integrated resorts has to you and how you anticipate following its principles if, in fact, you subscribe to them. Additionally, please explain how the project you propose embraces the legislature's mandate to present destination resort casinos rather than convenience casinos. And in my analysis of the responses provided by the applicants to this question, it is apparent to me that Mohegan Sun seeks an interpretation of a destination casino basically as a city integrated resort. It's spent an enormous amount of effort, and that's been detailed in the other reports, reaching out to local businesses and other entities within the vicinity of the casino in the surrounding communities. But its primary focus is on patrons within a 30-minute or so drive. For those people, those patrons, the casino will be a destination, but in a sense a destination no different in kind from, for example, the Garden, Symphony Hall, Fenway Park, or the MFA. For the long-distance traveler, it is likely to be a feature of the destination and not the destination itself. And so in my view overall, the approach that Mohegan Sun is taking here is really an approach that's akin to a city integrated resort. I don't think it's akin to it, I think it is. And it's modeled on the Harrah's Casino at the foot of Canal Street in downtown New Orleans. That was specifically mentioned in some of the application materials. And like that model, the approach emphasizes relationships with local restaurants, shops, and other businesses that draw travelers to the facility and then connect them with the surroundings. And that is a consistent feature of the business model that Mohegan Sun has presented to us. Mohegan Sun has energetically pursued the relationships, as I've said, with local businesses, but it's somewhat unclear how it intends to ensure that it is the destination rather than another feature of a greater Boston destination that already exists for those who are travelers from farther distances. Wynn's approach is to the concept of a destination market clearly focuses on a marketing plan designed to attract travelers from distant locations, principally those in Asia, and bring them to the facility for an extended stay. That's not the exclusive market, but it is an important segment of its market and a segment from which it is said in a variety of ways and in a variety of components of its application, adds the premium it believes it can achieve over what a regional casino can expect to receive from the local market. The plan is comprehensive, it's well integrated into its overall concept. The three principal components of that plan utilize Boston's worldwide reputation as a destination city, and the city has that reputation. It's there. Luxurious accommodations designed to attract travelers, and the Wynn brand, which is known for luxury, the local facility proposal embodies, at least on the interior, as I described during my presentation the other day. So in light of those factors, I rated the Mohegan Sun Revere approach, this sort of city-integrated approach, and the effort that they've put into connections with local businesses. I rated that as sufficient. I rated the Wynn approach to the same question as outstanding, chiefly because of its effort to draw and from afar and make a facility that's designed to be the destination. The second question for which I was responsible comes on the heels of that one. It's question 3. How do you propose to merge the creation of a destination resort or casino or slots parlor with the concept of creating an outward physical structure, that is, an establishment that relates to and is integrated with the host and surrounding communities, leverages Massachusetts' existing assets, and enhances and coordinates with Massachusetts' existing tourism and other leisure venues? This is an important question because from the outset, we've emphasized the importance of the connection between the casino and the surrounding communities and the area in which the casino exists. We've stressed that the old model of getting people into the casino and then not letting them out is not the model for which we're looking. And we're looking for ways in which applicants can create plans that will not only support the casino operations, but will support local businesses and indeed create local businesses in the vicinity. Mohegan Sun's approach to the outward look centers on the casino's relationship with existing businesses and attractions rather than a physical connection to the surrounding area. In other words, in the Mohegan Sun facility, the physical connection with the surrounding area is not the dominant impact of it. Indeed, in deference to the partially residential neighborhoods for which it's planned, the facility and its various components are accessible at only 2 points in addition to the garage area. We talked about that the other day when I mentioned the separation from the surrounding areas with the plantings, with the berms, all designed to reduce the mass of the building, to make it consistent with the neighborhood in which it exists. But that admirable trait of the building has a measure of separating it physically from the environment. That said, Mohegan Sun's been aggressive, as I just mentioned, in reaching out to make connections with surrounding businesses, to create this program in which points earned and rewards earned inside the casino can be spread throughout the area, and in that way reach out and make the casino operation a part economically and otherwise of the community in which it exists. Mohegan Sun's been aggressive in its efforts to do that, to connect with local businesses and attractions, and those connections, if maintained, will facilitate the outward flow by casino patrons. Wynn's approach to the outward look has 3 main components. The first is multiple entry points into the facility, the shop, the restaurants, and the other attractions in the arcade. It's separated physically from the surrounding neighborhood by the very nature of its location at the end of a heavily industrialized area. But once you're into the area, into the facility, the entrances and outflows physically are at multiple points, and one can enter directly into the retail and restaurant components of the facility without going into the casino itself. So in that sense, it's physically related to the surroundings. In addition to that, there is the outdoor space that will be landscaped in a fashion that's designed to attract walkers, picnickers, and others, at least in fair weather, and facilitate access to an extended harbor walk. We talked about that and looked at that as part of the site plan. That area will be accessible to casino patrons and non-casino patrons and those who wish to come by. And third is the use of waterborne transportation to connect the facility to downtown Boston and the airport, I say here, although the airport plans are not finalized, and indeed there is not currently a plan to connect to the airport, but there are two places in downtown Boston. And that holds a promise of greater expansion as time progresses. The connection by water to downtown Boston and the facility really is a component that complies with this question in a physical sense. The downtown Boston area is a fascinating and at many times beautiful area when viewed by the water. And that ride itself can be an attraction that leverages on a natural asset, the beauty of the skyline. At sunset from the water, it's extraordinary. At nighttime, it's extraordinary. And in the sunrise, if you're up that early, it's extraordinary as well. So that is a piece of the proposal that fully meets this. In some, although they've approached this in different ways, both of these proposals are, I rate, very good in fulfilling the goals that this question embodies. So with that, let me turn it over to Commissioner Zuniga, who will present the next questions. We're going to do this, as you may beginning to surmise, in the order that we presented the other ones.
Thank you. Given my section, question 4 really fit into a lot of what I was talking about yesterday and a lot of what I concentrated in. I'll read the question for the record and then summarize the ratings. Question number 4, the applicants were asked to describe the competitive environment in which they anticipate operating over the next 10 years and how the applicant planned to succeed in that environment without taking revenues away from Massachusetts gaming establishments, racetracks, or other businesses. So there are 2 key elements to this question. There's the notion of competition, of course, but there's also a subtext in the question that I gather into how this decision complements the decisions that we've made in the past. We've already licensed a slots parlor and a Region B applicant. And in a way, this decision will complement, will build on the decisions that we've made in the past, and to some level, set the stage for a future decision if we come to that point on Region C. I've excluded that from the analysis and just building on, or rather focusing on the building question. I thought of this as a portfolio. If I was building a portfolio of companies or stocks, you see how they complement, diversify each other, and from a Commonwealth perspective, I think with the first decision in the Category 2, we obtained a very much a convenience operation. The day trip is going to be what's going to be important there. There's obviously the physical structure that will not support any kind of overnight guests. Maybe sometimes on nearby towns. The next level up was the regional casino with all its attributes in Region B. And in my view, the focus that Wynn brings to the high end and the international play contrasted that with Mohegan is something that allows us to, in my view, really diversify what portfolio we are building in these, with these decisions. So their emphasis is on differentiation and segmentation. They've done that elsewhere. They compete heavily in a heavily competitive two places, Macau and Las Vegas, and they distinguish themselves by their product. And in my view, they obtain a very good to outstanding rating in this question. Mohegan Sun, the question there addresses something that I talked a lot about, or at some length yesterday with the marketing restriction. I'm going to leave it at that because the amendment to the marketing restriction question has been proposed. We'll see what we talk about tomorrow, and then later on further. I also want to mention something that is also an undertone to the competitive topic here. The Eastern Seaboard is clearly getting competitive in terms of jurisdictions expanding gaming. New York is a recent example. Their stock in New Hampshire recently failed, but that may resurface. From a competitive standpoint, differentiation and segmentation is also an important piece. And that topic favors Wynn, in my opinion. In addition to that, they have in their financials the margins necessary to react to changing conditions. Not one applicant is going to get everything right. That includes the other decisions that we've made in the past. Their ability to react to the market is going to be key, in my opinion, and that also is reflected in the rating.
All right.
The second question I had to do with how aggressively the applicants attempted to market outside of Massachusetts and internationally, perhaps in cooperation with existing industries and organizations such as Massport, MOTT, that is the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, and certainly in collaboration with other existing institutional drivers of this economic development in the state. And in terms of the responses, Mohegan was very much responded perhaps what we wanted to hear in this regard in a very collaborative manner. They anticipate that they would approach the existing agencies, MOTT or the Greater Boston Conventions and Visitors Bureau. They highlight that their proximity to Logan Airport is a real asset, which I firmly believe is the case. And they also have an existing database of customers that will allow them to market directly, obviously. But as just dovetailing a little bit on the past question and my presentation yesterday, their emphasis and operations plan demonstrate, in my view, that the majority of the revenues would be coming from the regional market, and therefore they get, in my view, a sufficient rating in this topic. Conversely, WIN relies on a lot of employees that they currently have internationally and domestically to bring or attempt to bring players and tourists and drive that business to the Massachusetts operation. Their operations plan support this notion. Their budget supports it as well. They have budgeted significant amounts for pre-opening expenses, which would be the relative or the related line item in this question. And although they are silent when it comes to responding to the question, they're silent on how exactly they will collaborate with the existing agencies. They are attempting to do it, themselves, and that I think is very commendable and very important and relevant to what we're trying to do. So again, although silent on those specific efforts, their focus on the international travel, the extended stay, the player that comes from farther away that may bring more spending dollars is, in my view, something that is right along the lines of the goal of generating economic development for the state by bringing dollars from outside. So therefore, I give them a very good rating on this question.
All right, questions?
No.
No questions? Commissioner Cameron, you're up for the next
Thank you, Commissioner McHugh. I have the next question, which is the Massachusetts brand. How does the project you propose manifest an appreciation for and collaboration with the existing Massachusetts brand? Examples: intellectual, knowledge, economy, biomedical, life sciences, educational and financial services, economic driver, and our long history of innovation and economic regeneration over the 400 years of existence. I actually rated both of these applicants sufficient to very good, and I'll explain why. And this is after meeting with the group of advisors and listening to their ideas on this. Mohegan Sun, their tribal culture and traditional approach to develop a facility is compatible with the regional community, and it's consistent with New England's reserved cultural history. Their culture and history have provided them with a deep understanding and knowledge of the region. This integration with community has influenced both their design features and their outreach efforts. They have committed to the renewal of local historic institutions such as Suffolk Downs, Revere Beach. Mohegan Sun's marketing approach reflects their emphasis on attracting a great percentage of customers from the New England region. Again, this is in keeping with pieces of the Massachusetts brand. Wynn Everett, also sufficient to very good. Wynn proposes to add destination entertainment to the multifaceted Massachusetts brand. Wynn is committed to the restoration of a contaminated site and to renewing the connection of an underutilized industrial waterfront to public access. This approach aligns with Massachusetts' recent emphasis on recapturing the economic and recreational values of its historic harbor sites. Wynn's marketing strategy to attract a greater percentage of international visitors to their facility is consistent with their worldwide reputation. Again, different approaches to this question, both good, each in line with certain aspects of the Massachusetts brand, and thus the sufficient / very good rating for each. Any questions with that? The next question I had, which was question 9, the advisory group, as they have in the past 2 evaluations, saw little value in, the question was just, the question itself is describe any post-licensing actions by the Commission or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that you believe would be essential for the success of the project you are proposing. There's, the applicants did not, and I'm talking collectively with applicants over every region, did not look at this question in a uniform manner. I don't believe it was a well-written question, so when so many applicants look at it differently, it's not a well-written question. So we did not evaluate this. There's not enough information that would assist us with the overall evaluation here. So consistent with what has been done in the past, and I agreed with that, there's just no value because the information is not consistent and very impossible to evaluate. So that's what I have.
All right, questions, comments? Okay. And batting cleanup, Commissioner Stebbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had question number 5. Question number 5 is talking about meeting unmet needs. How do you propose to work with affiliated attractions and amenities to broaden the market base of the gaming facility and to meet unmet needs in our array of entertainment, education, and leisure resources? Mohegan Sun emphasized their response to this question, focusing on their relationship with City Center in terms of promoting entertainment events and utilizing both facilities, and what they would be using is somewhat of their flex space at their facility, also in potential partnership with the Mass Convention Center Authority to promote convention and meeting activity. They did highlight, and it was interesting to read what a collaborative marketing initiative that they've undertaken in Connecticut to redefine the region in Connecticut to Mystic Country, which was a unique approach. In talking with some of the folks down in that region in Connecticut, they were certainly the leaders in that. They talked about creating awareness in a similar plan in Massachusetts, but from what I could see, didn't go into too much additional detail. When Everett focused their reply in terms of working with some key attractions in the greater Boston area, the TD Bank Garden, Boston Symphony Orchestra, and some additional groups somewhat related to their water transportation services, the Boston Harbor Association and the Boston Harbor Island Alliance, in addition to other partners that were identified by both applicants. Again, they in their reply, they talk about the five-star nature of their resort, and seeing that as both complementary and filling a niche in the Boston, Massachusetts existing tourism offering. They also stressed meeting unmet needs in our array of entertainment, education, and leisure resources by talking about a unique training program through Bunker Hill Community College on a 5-star level of service training that they hope to offer through the college. So we just, some more specificity and detail in trying to acknowledge their ability to meet some of the unmet needs in those areas. I graded Win Everett at very good and Mohegan Sun Revere at sufficient. The next question was with respect to diverse workforce and supplier base. It says, describe your commitment to a diverse workforce and supplier base in an inclusive approach to marketing, operations, and training practices that will take advantage of the broad range of skills and experiences represented in our Commonwealth's evolving demographic profile. Further identify and discuss the diversity within the leadership and the ownership of the applicant, if any. Here, Mohegan Sun, again, stressed their current status as a minority-owned business, an operating facility with a diverse workforce, 41%, and again, that being in a region that is less diverse than Boston. They identified a number of partnerships they plan to establish or that they've reached out to and engaged, as well as a diversity plan that has been created for Boston, or for the Revere facility. Wynn similarly demonstrated their track record for diversity in Las Vegas, They hope to, again, move ahead with a similar recruitment strategy, hiring and training strategy in Massachusetts with a number of accessory employee benefits to those programs. Again, Wynn also highlighted some diverse management leadership members they have, as well as their support for some ongoing things like citizenship classes and citizen swearing in. There wasn't anything really in the response that, I guess, really jumped off the plate in terms of a real difference between the two applicants' responses. So again, a lot of it was based on their track record and experience in other places. So I decided to grade them both as being sufficient with respect to question number 7. Question number 8, broadening the region's tourism appeal. What is your overall perspective and strategy for broadening the appeal of your region and the Commonwealth to travelers inside and outside of Massachusetts? Again, Mohegan Sun is focused on drawing visitors to the region, mostly from their membership base, encouraging them to explore destinations along the North Shore that are tremendous assets and probably underutilized and underdiscovered. But they also placed a greater emphasis, again, on the regional visitation and where they expect to draw their patron base from. They talked about their goals and working with other organizations and existing partnerships, again, including the Boston Convention Visitors Bureau, Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, Mass Convention Center Authority to help attract conventions and visitors to Boston. They also talked about using some in-room promotions, highlight area attractions, dedicated tab on the website, things like that, in response to this question. Wynn, again, has somewhat of a different take and a different approach, and they jumped right. What I found unique about their reply to this question is they immediately jump in with their analysis that Massachusetts is not maximizing dollars spent by visitors to Massachusetts with respect to their entertainment dollars being spent. They pegged a figure of 6% of the $16.9 billion spent by visitors is being spent on entertainment, and they feel that's well below what other major metropolitan regions in the United States experience. So they focus on drawing an established high-end existing customer base who tend to stay longer at the Wynn hotels. Their strategy is creating partnerships with cultural dining amenities, again, focusing on the relationship with TD Bank, Boston Pops, Boston Symphony Orchestra to enhance their customer stay. I gave them a stronger rating of very good to bordering on outstanding, again, because it was intriguing to me that they've identified this deficiency. They identified a business opportunity and then systematically laid out how they feel they can best address that deficiency in having Massachusetts realize the impact of travelers to the Commonwealth from inside, and certainly in this case, well outside of Massachusetts. Again, Mohegan Sun Revere had a good strategy for engaging visitors, I think, as they are here, and certainly utilizing their existing customer database, and certainly identified sufficient partners. But beyond that, I felt that their answer to that question was sufficient.
All right, any questions for Commissioner Stebbins? All right, thank you. Well, that concludes now the reports for the 5 sections of the application. We're going to suspend at this point until tomorrow, and our agenda for tomorrow is as follows. We have 3 principal items on our agenda for tomorrow. Our first item is to review and make judgments about and correct and deal with, in any event, the claims of material errors that we've received from the applicants, and I know we've gotten some of those claims already, and we'll process them and address them tomorrow. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to, as a commission, discuss in more detail the conditions that individual commissioners have proposed. The applicants have heard the conditions, they've seen the conditions, but the commission as a whole has to consider them. We have not yet done that, and we'll do that as our second item of business. It's a second item because the way we deal with the claims of material error may, in some cases, have an impact on the content of the conditions we ultimately agree on. The agreement we're going to reach tomorrow is an agreement to send to the applicants a list of conditions. It's not necessarily an agreement on the conditions we will, in fact, impose, but it is the conditions to which we want the applicants to respond. And then the third item of business will be to learn from the applicants how much time they need to respond to the conditions. We need to have a response in writing, and we need to have a response in writing before we can begin the deliberations, because the response may indicate the need for some additional interchange with the applicants, and it, in any event, will guide our thinking as we approach the deliberations. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. The responses to, or the assertions of any claim of material error from today's presentations are due at 9:30 tomorrow morning in accordance with the organizational outline the staff has created with the applicants. So they have until 9:30 to provide us with those. So we're going to begin our meeting tomorrow morning at 10:30. That'll give us an opportunity to take a look at what we get, to discuss it with the each of us with our advisors, and to propose some responses to the claims that we get. We need at least an hour to do that, although we'll work this afternoon, the rest of the afternoon, and tonight on those claims that we've already received. So that's the agenda for tomorrow, and as I say, we'll resume the public session at 10:30, and we now stand in adjournment until that time. Thank you all.